few businesses that encourage our customers to use less of our product. And that's what conservation is. We're trying to protect our vital resources. Northeast Florida utilizes reclaimed water for irrigation, and the benefit is that instead of using our precious drinking water supply to irrigate your lawn, they're utilizing reclaimed water for that purpose. JEA's water sustainability efforts help to ensure that we have a safe, reliable water supply for our neighbors, our friends, our community, and generations to come.
This is the 8th time JEA has invited pastors to come learn more about the utility.
This event was the brainchild of a group of JEA employees some years ago, sitting around a table talking about our weekend. And some of us said, you know, when I was in service yesterday, our pastor called JEA the devil. He said he didn't say the actual devil, did he? Yeah, he said the actual devil. So we knew we had some work to do.
30 pastors heard about dozens of JEA programs, from summer STEM academies to bill assistance. Some even took notes.
I've been here just a little over a year, and I am very much involved with the community and with my parishioners, and I wanted to make sure I understood exactly what the partnership is between JEA and the community.
Just thinking about how we can continue to ensure resources for our congregation. Had a lively conversation about some opportunities for our youth through our summer program. We do a STEAM program every year.
Yeah, based on the information that I receive here, I can definitely guide them and help them, be able to give them more details about rape, and then also with the conservation part of it.
Jay Stowe pointed out that for the 6th month in a row, JEA has had the lowest utility bills in the state. He also thanked the pastors for coming to the luncheon.
If you get frustrated with us, then you know us now. Call us. If you feel the need to preach that we're the devil, call us first. So, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Can we have the adoption of the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All those against? Motion passes. Values Moment by Ty Demps.
Good morning. I am Ty Demps, a digital media coordinator at JEA. I work on the digital communications team, managing JEA's social media accounts on various platforms. For those of you attending in person, the safety briefing is on the screen and in your packets. For those of you attending virtually, please be mindful of your surroundings. At JEA, we have 3 core values: safety, integrity, and respect. This morning, I will be discussing respect. If we took the time, I'm sure many of us could recall our childhood school morning routines. One important moment my siblings and I shared was an affirmation we received from our mom every day. Whether we were walking to the bus stop or in the car rider line as we got out, she always left us with these words: be an example, show respect. These words continue to resonate with me, even in adulthood. You might think of respect as an outward expression, but it's important to also include yourself on the list of people who deserve respect. The respect I'm talking about comes from the mirror, from you to you. Respect can take many forms: advocating for yourself and speaking up when you need help, taking a short walk during lunch, meditating, even trusting yourself with the challenges of leading a new project. For example, on a football team, we all know the quarterback, running back, and wide receivers get the glamour. But I argue the kicker matters even more. With 1 second left, he is given the ball to kick a game-winning field goal. If he makes it, he's a hero. If he misses it, he shoulders the blame for losing the game. The kicker has to trust himself, his training, his skills, and his teammates week after week. He can't let a missed field goal bring him down. He has to reset, practice, give his best, show up for his teammates, and most of all, give himself grace and respect. We don't usually have a hard time affirming ourselves when we accomplish a goal or succeed. But for those days in between, or even those that are a little tougher, I offer you one of the many mantras my mother gave me. Be an example, show respect. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman. I just wanted to update the committee or the board on the fact that today before TEU and Finance Committee Bill 2023-724 is being taken up. As you might recall, this is the increasing the debt ceiling for the respective systems that JEA operates. Well, I'm not able to speak to my colleagues with respect to their disposition on it. The Council Audit Office and I have talked about it at length, and they're comfortable with the new form of presentation, if you will, number one, and number two, a sense of comfort with respect to the fact that the requests for the debt ceiling nut caps for the present are within the capability of what we already owe in that respect. And but further reaffirmed when management agreed to provide as part of the annual budget review process where they were in terms of borrowing. So I think I fully expected to get through both committees today and then before the full council next Tuesday evening. That's my report.
Well, Councilman Boland, thank you for your commitment to our community, but also the amount of work that you do with JEA. So appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Comments from the public. Josh Melko.
Is this on? There we go. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Josh Melko, Associate Professor at University of North Florida. I was pleased to see sort of the detailed analysis and the solar site recommendation here, especially PFM's analyses of the various alternatives, whether you're going with a power purchase agreement or the build transfer agreement. I just wanted to talk on a few points within that analysis and urge the board or JEA broadly to sort of consider how this evolves as the regulatory framework becomes more clear, as I expect in the coming months. So it says in here that an important consideration of the analysis for build transfer agreements where JEA would own the solar and battery storage is the extent to which the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act benefits for renewable sources might be available to JEA as the owner. Okay, as someone who worked on that act, I'm pretty familiar with the domestic content bonus, the energy community bonus, and the penalties involved. And this whole analysis really depends on two things, which they rightly explain here: the interest rates you can expect for borrowing, but also how accessible these IRA tax credits are going to be for JEA. It says here that PFM, with JEA's concurrence, assumed all IRA benefits were reduced by an initial 15% based on the expectation that construction of the assets would commence in 2025. And as it exists now, it is correct to say that there is a penalty of 15%, okay, if you don't build something till 2025. But the Biden administration is really going to have to reckon with this battle between having domestic energy requirements and domestic content requirements and their ambitious goal to have more renewable and clean energy. And there's already, whispers of waivers that people like JEA or entities like JEA could access to waive this penalty. So I think it's really paramount for JEA to sort of consider the analysis without that 15% penalty. And I expect, in the coming months, the IRS and the Treasury to sort of rule on that and clarify that for certain entities like JEA, that will more or less be brought to zero. The other thing I want to talk about in the analysis is at the end they say an improved IRA tax credit outcome would have to be roughly 40% of the total project cost. The sites here would qualify for 30%, okay? But the entire north side pretty much of Jacksonville gets a 10% bonus, okay? If you looked at sites there, those are eligible for this 40% bonus. None of the sites in the analysis that PFM did obviously are in those places, but again, to truly leverage our ability to build and own something as a community, strongly encourage the analysis to be redone or reconfigured to look at building something on the north side to achieve that 40% tax credit bonus, and with the assumption that waivers will exist in the near future for JEA to access, no penalties for building these things. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. This time, hand it over to Jay for his CEO report.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and good morning to everyone.
Yes. Landon, is there anybody that wants to speak?
Sure. Currently, right now, we have no raised hands or public comments in the chat this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Landon. Back to you, Jay.
Good morning again to everyone. First of all, welcome to the first board meeting of the new fiscal year. I try to say this at every meeting, but I want to reiterate the same thing that you said to Councilman Boylan. Thank you for the service council. Thank you to the service the board makes, and thank you to the service that the employees make every day to serve this community. We're grateful for the time that you put in to try to help make us a better organization. I'm going to spend a little bit longer today on my report than I normally do, cover what I would call the more typical points, and then I want to jump into a little more detail about how I would like for us as an organization to plan in a little bit different way, more comprehensive, more integrated way. I transition to enterprise level planning. But first, you saw the video before the meeting started, sharing a little bit about the pastors' luncheon that we held the last couple of weeks. That's a partnership with the American Association of Blacks in Energy, and we were joined by 35 local pastors, local churches. It's a good opportunity for us to connect with the community, to share about programs and services that JEA offers, including some of the rate discussions that we'll have later on. And then we got the opportunity to hear things that are important to their congregation. This is the 8th of one of these that we've had, and I think it was an impactful event, and I appreciate the work that went in to put this on, and that the pastors came and shared their thoughts with us. As a utility, on a new topic on SJRPP, a utility, I believe our primary job is to provide for public health and public safety for all the people in our area in Northeast Florida. But that's just to get to what our core function is, which is supporting economic development. I believe, and you've heard me say before, that any utility, including us, is an economic development engine for the region that they serve. And so now that the remediation and the work at St. John's River Power Park is complete, our team's been working with CBRE and ETM, partnering with key stakeholders, with the port, the city, state legislators, as we continue to make progress on developing a strategy to take SJRPP to market. The next step in this process is for you to declare this a strategic asset. This will allow us to, in the beginning, now, in the meantime, we'll be able to dispose of some of the property that is detached from the main part of SJRPP. We're presenting a resolution for approval today, and I appreciate the work that Paul Mitchell and Michael Corbett on our real estate team have done, working with CBRE and ETM to work through this as we try to continue to improve lives and build community with this project. Also want to thank Chair Stein for asking John Baker to help to continue to work with us as a board representative to oversee what we're doing at SJRPP. John brings extensive knowledge. It says, I wrote down here that you bring extensive knowledge for commercial and industrial real estate and development, but really extensive knowledge in everything that we talk about. So thank you for that. Also, as part of our effort to support economic development, in particular in the downtown area, we were able to partner with the Downtown Investment Authority and host a symposium to hear a panel of experts explore the topic and the idea of office to residential conversions. I'd like to thank Paul Mitchell in Economic Development for representing JEA, Julie Crawford, Senior Advisor, for supporting and partnering with us in the DIA, because this is an important part of our economic development focus and one of the 3 areas that we're focusing on to try to figure out how to help support downtown. And we have an old building that we need to figure out what we can do with. At our last meeting in September, just as the meeting was ending, we received word of a tragic incident that happened, and I would like to call on Ray Marshall to speak to that just for a few minutes.
Thank you, Jay. Good morning, Chair Stein. Good morning, Board. So as Jay mentioned, at the close of the last board meeting, a tragic event did occur. One of our water maintenance crews was working just a few miles from here, and they had just finished making repairs to a water main when they heard a gunshot and observed a shooting victim in a crash vehicle near the work site. Our members responded to the gunshot victim, calling 911 and rendering first aid until JFRD arrived. We're so very thankful our crews were there to offer assistance during this unfortunate and senseless act of violence. This, of course, was a dangerous scenario for them, and our crews are faced with dangerous situations in their day-to-day work duties. They work in deep excavations and at high elevations, but no one anticipates something such as this would occur. We take their safety, including their emotional well-being, as our top priority. So we would like to recognize and extend appreciation to members of that crew, and some of them are here today, and I'm going to ask those that are here if they would please stand, and I'm going to call out all the names of the members of the crew: Wesley McManaway, Brian Williams, Michael Owen, Baylor Herrera, Marcus Newman, and Ben Burris. Thank you so much for exhibiting and living the values of JEA, gentlemen. Thank you.
Before you get started, I just want to reiterate the dedication of all the employees is incredible, but in a tough, stressful situation, incredible work. And I'll tell you, Ray has just finished hip surgery and she has not missed a beat. So thank you. Yes.
Thank you. And thank you for the response. We're in the community. We have people in the community and see when things don't look right. They're not usually quite as extreme as Ray said as this, but we appreciate it. It lines up with part of our values of safety. And while these employees stepped up, it is one of our values to focus on safety. I'm proud to let you know that at the end of September, we crossed over 1 million hours without an OSHA-defined lost time injury, which is a big deal for us to hit these milestones. As of yesterday, we're nearly at 1.5 million hours, and I want to encourage all of our teams to continue to focus on all of our values, but in particular with the dangerous jobs that we do every day. Really pay attention to safety and make good decisions. The presentations and the agenda today has a little bit more information in it than we have had in the past. In the past, we've had committees to cover areas of our business, and the committee members participated in a deep dive discussion about topics that came before them. Our idea now in this fiscal year is to bring all of these topics to the board to ensure that all of our board members have the opportunity to participate in these conversations. And so that's part of the reason for the change in the way that the agenda looks. And then one other change that probably not every meeting we will do this, but I have a little bit more information that I want to be able to dive into what we're doing with regard to our efforts related to enterprise planning and how we want to change the way that we're thinking about that to bring more information to you with a longer view of what's happening in our organization. So with that, I'm going to start with our strategic direction. This is a slide that you have seen before, and it's something we like to keep in front of our entire team, focused on improving lives and building community. We have that strong mission and vision, and we want to be the best utility in the nation. We should work hard every day to achieve that, and we should take that calling seriously. Today, I want to walk through the foundation of what is a new concept at JEA with a more integrated planning process. It begins with this strategic direction and then moves to how we'll measure success at the corporate level, how we set financial operational goals, make key resource decisions, and reviews the key planning assumptions. The process will position us to build out a 10-year plan that will become the basis for the immediate 3-year business plan and our annual budgets that will go both before the board for approval and city council. This mission, vision, values, and strategic focus on the left side of this slide does not change much and should not change much from year to year. Our strategic objectives on the right-hand side may evolve, and I'd like to walk through a couple, 2 or 3 updates for fiscal year 24. Under the plan for the future strategic objective, we have modified and changed in the past, we've had the integrated resource plan as one of our objectives, and we've changed that to an enterprise planning objective. All of us are familiar with the IRP, the electric IRP that we finalized earlier this year that established goals looking forward to 2030. The IRP is an important process and a document that will help us plan for our energy future, and it included involvement with the community and community stakeholders. By moving to this enterprise planning process, JEA can incorporate its long-range financial operational planning to be sure that we have key resources and goals are approached more collaboratively across the entire enterprise. This process will help us establish the key assumptions that guide and direct all parts of the organization, and a transition from water planning, electric planning, and financial planning to one that is a little bit more coordinated. And I think this will help us be able to make better decisions moving forward. Also under plan for the future, we've added grid modernization as one of our strategic objectives. While the electric grid is complex and there's a lot of asset owners, there's customers, it requires all of these parts to work together to provide reliable service. We've been fortunate at JEA to have a great team of people that have made the right investments to maintain reliable and efficient electric grid for many years. However, the technology has advanced, and as distributed energy resources are deployed more, our customer expectations and preferences are changing. And I think that JEA must continue to adapt its approach to grid planning. Modernizing the grid is not just about new technologies, but it also provides an opportunity to work with our customers to deliver reliable energy, reduce the frequency of outages, mitigate weather impacts, and improve security, reduce peak loads, and help lower operational cost. While this is focused in large part on the electric grid, our water and wastewater, district energy, and communication systems also need to leverage technology that improves resiliency, sustainability, and operational flexibility. A modernized grid will enhance JEA's position as an environmental steward of the communities that we serve. And as an energy and water utility, we should lead the way in advancing strategies and efforts that will improve the delivery, efficiency, and reliability of these foundational services for years to come. 2 other objectives that remain on the list of strategic objectives, but I'd like to highlight, are environmental stewardship and customer solutions. JEA is one of the most important environmental organizations in Northeast Florida. And It's why we focused on projects like our H2.0 purification facility, which is a significant step in JEA's path towards preserving and protecting the Floridian aquifer and ensuring sustainable water supply. It's also why the recent electric IRP made clean energy commitments by 2030 and continues investment in the health of the St. Johns River. Because while we're focused on providing the foundational services that we talk about each day, we also know that we serve as stewards of our region's natural resources. Under customer solutions strategic objective, it remains core to what we do and will require JEA to adapt its approach to customer needs and expectations. Each of our customers is different. Some have sustainability goals, others are focused on price, others want unique service delivery options. In today's economy, consumers are seeking solutions that meet their specific needs, and technological improvements continue to make tailored solutions more possible. This creates an opportunity for JEA to meet our customers where they are, allowing us to deepen customer and community engagement. By working more closely with our customers, JEA can leverage customer resources to help achieve our goals and provide operational flexibility and overall economic growth to Northeast Florida. I should have started in the beginning to say if you have questions, then you can stop me if we have anything. Yes, sir.
What is meant by grid modernization?
So it's an interesting thing because it's one of these terms that if you ask different people in the industry, you get different answers. For us, it's going to mean being sure that we have technology deeper in our system to be able to control our system more on the electric side, to control our system more, potentially more automatic switching that would allow reduced outage time, more data coming back to our to the control room so that we can make decisions on how to turn people back on. It is extending fiber further and deeper into the system to get more information more quickly, updating the way that our AMI meters are able to coordinate and communicate. So this is an overall, how do we make the grid more move into this century? As we see more distributed resources, as we see more people put in solar and batteries and electric vehicles, it changes the way that the electric system operates and works. In the past, it's always been a one-way, generate it, and then it goes to the meter. Now there may be more and more electricity that goes different ways, and we'll have to update the way we think about our distribution system. So that's a high level on the electric side. Similar on the water side, how do we manage and maintain pump stations and keep our system updated?
Thank you. But I hadn't thought of that.
Isn't it that our transmission needs to be upgraded too, which is a monumental long-term effort? Is that not correct?
It is. So in our process, we're going to have to upgrade our transmission. We're going to have to upgrade our generation. That generation was the main focus of the last electric IRP. As we move forward, we'll have more coordinated planning to be able to take into account on the electric side, distribution, generation, and transmission, both internal to our system and external, where we're getting buying energy from places that are outside that are not our own assets.
And this is a summary slide. There's some slides that attach to it, and just a couple of comments. I'll be harping on this for months to come. You know, we talk about on page 13, developing a price structure that's based on cost of service. I just want to make sure that we continue to talk about looking at our cost and making sure that we do a deep dive into our cost as we move forward into this plan. I would like for us to be best in class for cost analysis and finding ways to save money as opposed to just pass the pricing structure on to the cost. So I'd love for that to be a specific carve out. And the other thing on a another slide. The reference to, these are operational goals carried to 34. We have said, put a stake in the ground that we'll do another IRP. There's reference to 35% clean energy to 34. I want to make sure people understand we're not saying we're not going to push ourselves at the next IRP process to improve that percentage.
That's right. And in fact, part of the O&M specifically, when we look at the scorecard, which is one of the other slides that's in here, is updated for fiscal year 24. But the idea behind the scorecard is that we would be able to align it to our strategic direction. And it's updated to align to those strategic focus areas that we have of developing an unbeatable team and delivering business excellence and earning customer loyalty. We've reduced the number of metrics on the corporate scorecard from 15 down to 10, but we've increased the number of business level scorecards so that we can work with each business group to be able to do exactly what you're talking about. Each group will have metrics and goals to represent their individual areas. And I think this will allow us to get more in depth with our corporate performance goals and better connect individual performance with the metrics that fold up to this corporate. We're also on this scorecard, we'll start displaying consistent, verifiable benchmarks for all of our goals. And that way we can compare ourselves to other locations and be sure that we can become the best. This is one of the ways that we can measure being best in class and best utility in the nation. On the scorecard this year, we've included our safety, lost time, incident rate, and employee engagement score underneath the unbeatable team portion. The employee engagement is through our Glint survey that we do several times a year. The DEI metrics for fiscal year 23 are not on the corporate scorecard. They are calculated inside the employee engagement, and we have a separate DEI scorecard that we can dig into on one level below this. Representing customer loyalty, we'll continue to use the J.D. Power customer satisfaction survey results. This year, we're setting the goals to achieve an absolute score and setting our goals with the quartile ranking listed there. The biggest changes, I think, on this scorecard really tie back into the business excellence part of this, where we will be tracking total spend, which is an aggregate of O&M, capital, fuel, and purchase power expense. That will, again, allow us to track the total spend to see where we are, and then the links we can dive into to get into more detail to be able to track where we are on each of those different components. We also have added the total customer bill, which is a measure of how we are doing relative to the other systems in
meeting of the finance committee.
Sorry.
Call this meeting to order. We'll start with introductions of today's. Good morning. My name is Scott Wilson.
I sometimes don't get sidetracked, but sometimes I do. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, we're gonna track that with our customer survey. We also have, under delivering business excellence, one reliability metric for each of our systems. The total customer bill, the measure of that helps us know and see that we are, through our cost of service, managing the bill. That's the one that we've been the lowest of our total bill for the last 6 or 7 months. Our goal is not to be the lowest bill; it's to have reasonable rates to be able to cover the cost. But that's one of our measures to be sure that we're comparing to other places. We've added a clean energy goal this year, and while our goal is ultimately 35% for 2030, we wanted to be able to put some incremental steps in there for the years between now and 2030. So that's in there. We think this will At the end of the year, we were at 7%. That's Vogel and solar. Yeah, that's right. Yes, sir. Any other questions on the scorecard itself?
General DeSalvo or Dr. Faison, I know y'all are remote. Any questions there?
No, none on my end. It looks real good. Thanks, Bobby.
Jay?
Yes.
Being new to this process, can you talk to us about the corporate performance scorecard and what that is, and in relation to, and what I'm really getting at is this how individual managers, people leaders are being held accountable for culture, employee engagement, the DEI metrics? And then also a slide back. This is probably like 5 questions, Jay. My apologies. On the slide back, I'm also curious as to under environmental stewardship, what was the team's thought process behind placing that under community engagement versus the long-term planning piece? And then in looking at the scorecard, how are the clean energy metric related to environmental stewardship, and what other metrics on there are related to environmental stewardship?
Okay. The first question, and I think I'm going to get all these, but maybe we're moving in a direction where this can be better used as how we are looking at what you call the leaders of the organization, to be sure that we're tying this. This will allow us to be more directly connected in specific areas underneath the business scorecards all the way up to the corporate scorecard and tie that together. I don't think we're where we need to be yet on that within our performance appraisal process, but it's something we need to move towards. And this is one of those steps in the process, is to get a good scorecard for us to be able to match and work towards that. That's the first one. The environmental stewardship on the slide. When we first developed this blue sheet, we had all of our strategic objectives underneath one of our strategic focus areas. It turns out almost every one of these could go under almost any other one. And so we end up putting environmental stewardship there because we think that ultimately, if we are helping protect the environment, then that's a direct reflection on our community engagement, and how we're working with the community and the customers. All of these things require long-term planning for the future. And so it could go, many of these could go anywhere. In fact, we moved employee development, we moved from plan for the future up to exceptional work culture. So that we felt like it matched better in there. We do not spend a whole lot of time worrying about the headings, but more on the what are we doing to kind of move in that direction. And I think there was another question, but I don't remember.
What are the metrics that are connected to environmental stewardship on the corporate performance scorecard?
So on the corporate level, the clean energy is certainly one of them. The reliability on sanitary sewer overflows is certainly one that we could tie back to environmental stewardship. And then there will be more in each of the business areas. We will have more information on those.
Did that answer all your questions?
All 5 of them, yes.
Thank you. So the financial and operational goals, we're really working to develop a plan over the next several months. This is the first introduction of some of the key concepts, but the financial goals will come directly from the board pricing policy that the board's approved. They'll help drive towards healthy financials and reasonable rates. We'll continue to come to the board annually with recommended updates. We updated it recently. On this, there's one item that will change in the new pricing policy, that we've gone ahead and put here as one of our targets is a minimum annual fixed charge coverage ratio of 1.5. That will help relieve some pressure on rates. But this is from the financial policy, and it matches up with what our goals are related to financial. And then operational goals, you're right. This one has the dates of 25 through 34, which is where we're headed to get a 10-year plan. We currently have inside of this plan electric system goals between now and 2030 to get to these. These are the IRP goals on the electric system. Underneath the water system, these are some of the targets and goals that we're working on. Some of those will be in 2032. Some of them will take longer as we move towards that more sustainable water supply. And then the chilled water system in the first quarter of next year, second quarter of next year, we should have a master planning exercise for the district energy system to bring to you, because that will help us with some of the environmental stewardship goals and provide customers comfort, convenience, flexibility. So these are the goals that we're working towards expanding out to 10 years at this point. The key planning assumptions when we look out to 2034 take the financial and operational goals and resource plans into account. We believe that these assumptions will lead to a more viable 10-year plan. The first assumption is that we're going to continue to add customers at about a 2% per year growth on both electric and water. That's following the last several years' trend. The forecast for electric sales need to be refined because the projection for electrification and demand side management will change this. This is our current forecast to keep sales flat. That's consistent with our IRP goals that we put in place to try to manage load growth on electric to be flat. On water, we see annual growth at about 1.5%. Both systems have substantial capital improvement plans that are going to require approximately $4.5 billion in new debt. Operation and maintenance expenses have historically increased at 3% annually, and currently that's in our plan, but we will be looking at what that should be over time, along with the capital plan to try to control cost. All of these planning assumptions include regular renewal replacement work, ongoing programs like our galvanized pipe replacement, the continuation of the septic tank phase-out program as it stands today, new generation, over $200 million in transmission investments, and $2 billion in regulatory compliance with Senate Bill 64, and the new generation plants that we put into the IRP. The plan requires additional revenue of approximately 3% a year in water and 3.5% on the electric side based on our current projections. There may need to be higher electric rate increases in the short term in the first 5 years, and that can be achieved not only through rate increases, but through new revenue initiatives or cost savings. So from here, we're going to spend the next several months to build out the 10-year plan, bringing components of the plan to the board with the intent of having a finalized 3-year business plan and budget for your approval in June.
So Jay, if we hit a bump economically, do you have a backup maintenance cap plan and a capital plan?
Yeah, so the capital plan, specifically the capital plan would drop for the items that are tied directly to development, but many of the larger dollar figures on here are long-term projects that wouldn't change regardless of the depending on what type of economic issue we come in to play with, because when we start moving down the path to comply with Senate Bill 64, we'll have those regulations that are in place. We have other regulations that are on the water side and on the electric side that we'll have to comply with. And then we have to look beyond a short-term economic slowdown to be sure that we're ready for the long term. So we could adjust some of the smaller development type projects, but many of our projects are big and long term and would have to
even
continue.
in maintenance capex.
On the maintenance side, we might be able to slow down. We just have to be careful not to push costs out, and so we will adjust those based on, as proactive as we like to be. Some of what we have to be is reactive to the economy at the time. So,
John?
Jay, will you comment on the impact that electric vehicles could have on this plan?
Yes. So electric vehicles could be a growth that offset the economic downturn that you're talking about. And we're always going to look at external factors to make adjustments. We're not developing a 10-year plan once. We're developing an ongoing enterprise plan. Electric vehicles is part of the answer to the grid modernization need. We have a team right now that's developing plans to work with fleets that want to transition to electric vehicles, and we're working with the Electric Power Research Institute. Several meetings ago, we had them come talk to us about electric vehicles, and they're helping us look at how we can respond to electric vehicles and batteries in customers behind the meters and how that might work. We see other utilities already starting to see an increase in load driven by a combination of a little bit electric vehicles and a lot of data centers. And so we're watching how that might work. And if someone's putting in an electric vehicle and a battery, is there a way for us to value that differently than we valued it in the past? We've got a distributed energy resource, the value of distributed energy resource study that's underway right now to determine what the cost and value might be for electric vehicles. Any other questions? Thank you for bearing with us as we move through that. I think it becomes a very important piece of what we are called to do, to be able to have a plan that manages our capital, our O&M, our cost, and we continue to serve our customers the best way we can. This is a change in some of the way that we think about things, but it will allow us to track and be sure that we're on track whenever we keep on updating these plans annually and keep on looking out. Thank you.
Jay, thank you for a great report. Any questions, comments? John? Okay. Industry update. David LaFrance.
So as he's coming up to the mic, I'll introduce David. David leads the American Water Works Association. It's the world's largest and oldest association of water professionals with 50,000 members worldwide. He oversees a staff of approximately 150 people in Denver and Washington, D.C., and he guides AWWA's extensive scientific, educational, and public policy work to build a better world through better water. As an association leader, one of the things that I like about him is that he has been in the utility side of the world as well. Prior to joining AWWA, he was the CFO for Denver Water. With that, David, thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Jay, thank you for that nice introduction. And to the board, thank you for having me to come talk a little bit about AWWA, some industry trends. But I'd also just note that Victor and I have already had a nice conversation about rate setting, which is how my career in water, mostly how my career in water took off was I was with a company called CH2M Hill, which is now part of Jacobs. And they, at the time, had the largest group of rate setters in the nation, all of which were economists, and I was fortunate enough to be part of that at that time in my career. So American Water Works Association is a large water organization. My program today, I'll try and keep it brief. I've got several parts, but I'd like to start by talking a little bit about who AWWA is. So if we could go to the next slide. My agenda, I'll talk about AWWA. I'll talk about a couple of current issues, both using a report that we have called the State of the Industry Report and using some other metrics which I thought would be of interest to all of you. And then I'd like to end by talking about a program that we have called Water 2050. I think it will be particularly interesting for you all, and I believe actually that JEA is positioned very well to be an active part of our Water 2050 program. So if we can go to the next slide, I want to talk just a little bit about AWWA. And Jay mentioned our vision for the world is a better world through better water. And our mission is to strategically provide solutions to effectively manage water, the world's most vital resource. Let's go to the next slide. So that word solutions really is an important one for the American Water Works Association. We are an old organization. I'm going to come back to why solutions is important to us. We are an old organization. It was created by 22 water professionals back in 1881. They were all treatment plant operators. They came together at Washington University in St. Louis, and they came for one simple purpose, which was to exchange best practices with each other, trying to solve waterborne disease. And that idea of creating solutions, back to our mission statement, and sharing best practices is things that the American Water Works Association still does to this day. We do have a total of 50,000 members. And that makes us the largest association, being almost 142 years of age, makes us the oldest. The truth is on that it is not fully documented that we're the oldest and the largest, but I keep saying it and nobody tells me I'm wrong. So I'm going with that. At our core, we have our core member is a water utility. We have service providers as well. We have individuals. We have academics. We have people who work in laboratories. Anyone who touches the work that you would do here could be a member of AWWA. We focus on students. We focus on young professionals, and I'll explain what a young professional is here later on in my discussion. We do have 4,400 water utilities that are members. Now, there's about 50,000 water utilities in the United States, so 4,400 does not sound like a lot, but when you think about the fact that a very small percentage of our water utilities in the U.S. are like JEA, they're large, where the majority of utilities are very, very small, serving small communities. We have 100% of the large utilities are members of AWWA. And then most of our utility members are small utilities, but a smaller proportion of the total small utilities. What it means in terms of impact that we have is about 85% of the U.S. population receives their water from one of our utility members. 10% of our members are from Canada. Proportionally, U.S. population to Canada population is about that same sort of ratio. And we have about 800 of our members are from around the world. We are made up of pieces, or we call them sections. Most organizations would call them chapters. We have 43 of those throughout North America. We also have an office in India. And the chapter that is here in Florida, all of our members are also members of a chapter or a section. So the Florida section of AWWA is the third largest section that we have in North America. It's behind California and Texas. There are 2,840 members as of the end of last month from Florida. All right, let's go ahead to the next slide, please. So under current issues, I'll talk about a report called the State of the Industry Report. It's a big, long report. You can find it on our website. I'm only going to show you a snippet of one of the important statistics, and then I'll talk about some of the current things that we're focusing on at AWWA. So let's go ahead and look at the next slide where we'll look at the State of the Industry Report. Okay, so one of the things that we ask our members to tell us and recognize, this is a survey of water utilities and water professionals, mostly focusing on drinking water, but not exclusively. We have many wastewater utility members as well, or water professional members as well. So the top 5 issues that people are facing, or water utilities are facing today, are these 5 that we have here. What's interesting, if you are a scholar of AWWA's State of the Industry Report, is that infrastructure and replacement of aging infrastructure has been the dominant top position as long as I've been the CEO, which is for 13 years. It was that before that. I knew that when I was at Denver Water, it was still #1. So it has been something that has been with us a long time. I think there's movement on it, but it is such a important part of what utilities are doing, and in part because it's the buried infrastructure that is the biggest challenge. In the year 2001, AWWA issued a report called The Dawn of the Replacement Era. We were signaling to water professionals that the buried infrastructure was going to need to be replaced. In 2012, we issued a report called Buried No Longer, where we were trying to take the issue of the buried infrastructure, raise it up to the consciousness of everyone so that it was buried no longer. And at that point, we estimated that there was $1 trillion worth of buried infrastructure replacements over the next 25 years. Excuse me. That led to a program that you may have heard of called WIFIA. WIFIA is a low interest rate loan program. It was launched or visualized by the American Water Works Association and our government affairs group in Washington, D.C., worked to make that a law. And it's now run by the US EPA. Like all complicated things, the creators create it, and then someone else we have to literally hand it over to others, and then people forget that we started it. So I like to remind people that we did. But it has been a wonderful program, creating for both water, wastewater, reuse, creating low funding for capital projects. The other two things.
Let me stop.
Yes, sir.
Was any dollars in the infrastructure bill?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Was there any dollars available for the water and sewer industry for the Inflation Reduction Act?
Not when WIFIA, that wasn't a WIFIA program, right? That was, WIFIA came before that. And I'm not sure I know the answer to your question, but I can find that. Okay. Yes.
Bobby, great question. A lot of the focus of the IIJA in 2021 was on transportation, energy. There was some money put into water and wastewater that largely goes out to states through state revolving loan funds. And our experience with those has been very hard to administer. The cost benefit calculation doesn't work, but WIFIA is a program that does work and does cost out for us. So Janie Smalley, Haivu, Joe Orfano are actively working on a WIFIA application.
Great. Thank you, Laura. So I'd also just note that going to the bottom of this list actually goes for 20 different topics, but the public understanding of the value of water resources has moved up from number 8 to number 4. That is a big move in our year-to-year changes. And watershed and source water protection has moved up from 7 up to 5. Another big move. Interestingly, from my perspective, what was number 4 was replacing the workforce. So that dropped down to number 6. Not a big change, but sort of a noticeable change. And then what was number 5 was the public's understanding of the value of water service. So we have a movement up of the public's understanding of the value of water resources and a move down on the value of water services. Next slide, please. So I'd like to hit just a little bit on some of the work that AWWA is currently focusing on for its water utilities. And I will probably say a lot that AWWA is working on that. What that mostly means is our volunteer base, which is about 5,000 of our members who volunteer to do work for AWWA. They're supported by our AWWA staff, but they are the people who have our boots on the grounds, and they know how to do a lot of this work. All of these topics we can talk a long time for. I will try and be brief and just hit the top of the waves. I think most people are familiar with PFAS. I'll give you 2 quick things to take away from this. One is that EPA has a deadline of the end of this year for their drinking water standard. We don't think that's going to happen. We think that will roll into next year, largely because there's several steps that have to be completed before it can become the standard. Also, AWWA, in coalition with AMWA, NACWA, WEF, NRWA, and NAWC, are all working together to see if there is funding associated with PFAS, and there are protections for water utilities under CERCLA. And that seems to be something that has momentum, but yet there's still a lot of distance between here and the hole. Under cybersecurity, probably one of the fastest growing risks and concerns of water utilities right now. And again, I'll just hit 2 very quick notes on that. One is that EPA had made a ruling for utilities to address cybersecurity through the sanitary survey report. That happens when that occurred, Missouri, Arkansas, and Iowa challenged the legalities of that rule. The American Water Works Association and the National Rural Water Association came together and joined in on that position of the states. The courts issued an injunction effectively stopping the idea that the sanitary survey would be the tool for cybersecurity until the courts could address it. But in the meantime, the US EPA has withdrawn that approach. The second thing I would share with you is that AWWA and others have started looking at a way to address cybersecurity for water utilities that would be similar to what I think is more familiar to you, which is the NERC system. We have what we would call we are proposing what we would call the WRRO, which is the Water Risk and Resilience Organization. EPA would provide oversight to that, and it would be sort of an industry managed and led program for cybersecurity. We think that would be more effective and more efficient for water utilities. Affordability, which is a important emerging program for water. Water for the longest time has been high value, low cost, small part of everyone's monthly costs, but that's rapidly changing. The thing I'd like you to take away from that again is the coalition of water utilities have come together, AWWA, NACWA, which is an association for wastewater utilities, WEF, another association for wastewater utilities, and NAWC, which is the association for water companies, which are investor-owned companies. They've come together to promote something called LIHWAP, L-I-H-W-A-P, stands for Low Income Household Water Assistance Programs. This was a program that was in place during COVID. It allowed for payments for low-income households to pay their water bills. It's a useful program, and we are looking to, it has come to an end, and we're looking to create some bridge financing and ultimately leading to a permanent financing program. Their AWWA led a study with the other associations, bringing in some economists to look at different models. The LIHWAP program scored very high in those models, and compared to the others, one of the nicest things and important things, I think, for JEA and other water utilities is that the money that would be created for this would go to the utilities as opposed to simply going to the customers and could be being able to be used for other things. It would strictly be used to pay your water bill. The other thing that big movement, EPA had a standard to measure affordability starting by measuring the median in household income. We advocated, as did many others, that if you had an affordability problem at the median of your household incomes for your community, that it was a little bit too late. So the newest standard that's being advocated is to start looking at the 20th percentile of the household income, because at that point, you have a better chance to address real affordability as opposed to waiting all the way to the median. There's no perfect answers here on how to start doing that. And no, I would advocate that no one particular metric is going to work everywhere. But I think this is a bigger improvement. Lead and copper rule, another huge issue's been with us for a long time. It got its notoriety when Flint, Michigan had its lead problem in about 2015. I think just a couple things for you to take. We would expect revisions to the rule by October next year, and EPA's proposal will undoubtedly have that there will be full replacement of full lead service lines, and the expectation would be that the replacements would happen in 10 to 15 year time frame. I think there's consensus that that's a really tight time frame for many communities, especially if everyone's doing it all at the same time. And there will be a constraint on the availability and supply chain and things of that nature. It is a problem that's been in place for a long, long time. And so I'm glad to see that we are addressing it. AWWA is an advocate for removing lead service lines and for moving the full lead service lines. But we also recognize that it will take some time to achieve that goal. Finally, I'll hit with workforce, key part of what AWWA does. We do that through our education programs. The work I've been talking about so far, the first four things, those all happen at our DC office. I'll talk a little bit about what we do in the Denver office. A lot of our education programs come from there, but I'll just cite a few things. Our Young Professional program is designed to take water professionals who are between the ages of 25 and 35, provide them with experience to help advance them to their next professional career. And having been with AWWA now for 13 years, and when I was at Denver Water and AWWA created Young Professionals, I was just a little too old to become one, but I've been with our young professionals long enough so that they have advanced. I see them advancing in their careers, and I have them now on my board. I have a board of 64 people, and several of them have gone from the young professionals to being emerging professionals to being professionals, and now are on our board. Another thing that JEA may be interested in is a program. It's in its second year. It's called the Transformative Water Leaders Academy. It is designed for those people who are coming out of being young professionals. They are what we might call emerging professionals. It is designed to provide water professionals with the things that they need to know in a current landscape of being a water professional that you will never learn in college or in universities, et cetera. So it deals with a lot of more modern social issues. The third thing I'd talk about is something called Community Engineering Corps. This is a partnership that we created with ASCE and with Engineers Without Borders. It is designed to help small communities that do not have the human or financial resources to solve their infrastructure problems. AWWA helps with the water problems, ASCE with the other infrastructure problems, and Engineers Without Borders with all of the problems. It gives young professionals an opportunity to do real projects to build their career portfolio. It also requires senior professionals to come and support and provide mentorship. Just two more quick things. One is something called Water Equation. That's a philanthropic organization. Provides scholarships. Over the past several years, there's about $1.4 million in scholarships. Our vision is to be the largest scholarship fund in the world for water professionals. It also supports Community Engineering Corps and our young professionals. And then the final one, we offer a series of competitions that are highlighted at our annual conference, which is called ACE. I'd like to congratulate the JEA women's team for their competition, winning the Florida competition, which sent them to ACE. And that is a really fun way to help accelerate our water professionals. Okay, let's go to the last part and go to the next slide, please. So Water 2050 is a visioning exercise that we began about a year and a half ago. And go ahead and please go to the next slide. And it is something where we were emerging from COVID. We thought it would be important to, rather than deal with the immediate, to start thinking ahead. Water utilities always think ahead. And when one of my board members came to me with this, and he was thinking forward, he kept saying, well, we need to go beyond 5 years, which is what AWWA's strategic plan is focused on. And so after about a 5-minute conversation, I said, you mean you want to go out to, say, 2050? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, you know, water utilities have plans that go out 80, 50, 30, 10, and 1, depending on what kind of utility it is. So 1-year budgets, 10-year capital plans, 30-year water resource plans, 50-year infrastructure plans, and so on. So this wouldn't be unfamiliar to think out to Water 2050. The core of the program, we involved as many people as we could from different groups, but at its core, we had 5 different think tanks, each of which took place in a location that supported the topic. Each of the think tanks were focused on 5 different drivers that we thought would drive the future of water: sustainability, technology, economics, governance, and social and demographic issues. An example of having the topic in a location that supported it, I'll just use the technology one. At the technology one, we were in Silicon Valley at the Computer History Museum. And it was amazing. We had lots of technology leaders there, and we had people from Amazon, we had people who were digital twin experts, et cetera. And they were all so interested walking around this museum that it just helped make the conversation a lot better. Social and demographics, similarly, was in Birmingham, Alabama at the Civil Rights Museum. Same sort of response you got by being in the right environment. Out of this came 47 recommendations about the future. I'm going to share a few of them with you here in a second, which we have organized those into 5 strategic priorities that we think will allow us to better focus on the next wave of that. The next wave is going to include creating a visual of what the primary things are that the future will hold, and then doing some analysis on the 47 recommendations. What can AWWA lead? What do we need to bring from others? So AWWA doesn't do much with agriculture, but there are other organizations that address agriculture. AWWA doesn't do much with power, electric, gas, but by the way, JEA does some of that, and JEA is a partner with us. So we can find ways to connect with all of those sorts of organizations. All right, so I'll end with the next slide, which is 6 different things that I thought might be of interest to you. These are 6 of the recommendations that come out of Water 2050. Remember, this is people thinking broadly about what water will be like in 2050. And so the idea of net zero water communities, where the circular economy is in full play, water is being recycled, something I know that JEA does, something I know that's very important to Florida, in fact. And Florida, Texas, and California actually are 3 of the largest recycling communities or states, which also happen to be our 3 largest sections of AWWA. Integrating water-related utilities and partnering with other utilities. So the idea of being one utility, you will hear people talk about one water, which is the combination of drinking water, wastewater, reuse water, and stormwater, and thinking of those different forms of water in a holistic fashion. Part of what we started to envision for 2050 is not just thinking of water that way, but all utility services that way. That's going to become important in another one of these examples that I will show you. Rates that reflect the full cost of service and advance affordability. So finding the thread that gets both of those things done, where the price of water is going up because the cost of replacing infrastructure is going up. And how do you do a cost of service model that then also allows for affordability? So I would tell you, having been a rate setter, that it doesn't come in your pricing so much as it does in other programs related to solving affordability. And to the extent that it is done in pricing, I would always recommend that first you start with the full cost, and then you determine how you're going to create the discounts or the affordability issues so that you understand the cost associated with that. But this is going to be part of the future, and I fully believe that we will have this solved. Expansion of in-home and fit-for-purpose treatment technologies, something that makes us enormously uncomfortable as water professionals. And if you go back to those 22 people in the very, very beginning who created AWWA, they were all treatment plant people. They were solving waterborne disease, and they were saying, we can do this from our centralized treatment plants. And now the idea that point of use, point of entry treatment might become faster at creating responses to water issues is something that is becoming real. And we don't know exactly what that will be, but there is a partner of ours, the Water Quality Association, that does that. And they would say that they can move faster than water utilities can. And a skilled workforce reflecting the diversity of the community, I think that's going to be achieved before 2050. And I think it's happening already in many, many places. And then finally, the building of public trust, so utilities are recognized as the anchor institution. So if you have that one utility and we think about our communities, and I think if we think about that just as water, wastewater, and then you expand it to all the other utilities, there is really nothing that happens in our communities which isn't supported by institutions like the water utility, the wastewater utility. Every person, every day when they wake up, the first thing they're doing is touching water, and you are touching them. So I'll end there and just thank you again for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there any board members have any questions?
Hey, Bobby, I've got one if I could, please.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so first, David, great brief. Just on the prior slide where you have strategic priorities, one of it says water governance and policy. Can you just real quick expand? What do you mean by that?
All right. So I'm sorry, can you say which one it was again?
Yeah, so the prior slide where it has on strategic priorities, I think there were 5 of them. So one more, yeah, there. And then the number 4, water governance and policy. If you can just expand on that real quick, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, happy to do that. So these strategic priorities are a grouping of the 47 recommendations. So the one water governance would be governance that looked at one water, what we call one water in the industry, which is the combination of drinking water, wastewater, and recycled water, and mostly, and also, but not always included, stormwater. From a community standpoint, that would be part of the one water cycle. And the idea that there would be governance over that concept of just one water, I do think that as long as the U.S. has Safe Drinking Water Act and Clean Water Act, it becomes hard to have just one governance. But the idea would be that there would be one oversight. EPA would look more holistically in terms of creating its standards. Legislative activities would happen more holistically in terms of all water. AWWA advocates that, and for a long time, the idea of one water, which has really caught on in our community, we advocated for something called total water solutions, which did not catch on, but the idea is still relevant, which is that water in all forms has value, and the way you have to approach it depends on the type of form that it's in, because not all water is equal. So, but holistically, the idea of having one water professionals is the idea. Does that help?
Great, thank you. Absolutely.
I'm not going to ask David a question. I want to ask Jay to comment on what is the situation with regard to lead pipes in Jacksonville.
So I'm going to pass that to Laura Shepis. She's got the environmental group. We have done we are in compliance. I'll say that, and then she can expand on it.
I had a hunch that someone might ask, so I pulled up the results of our most recent triennial compliance sampling. We put out a water quality report annually, and of course we're at the lab, the environmental team, and out in the field, folks are continually sampling to see what's out there. So recently, over the last reasonable period, we took 188 samples throughout JEA's service territory, and there were no detects for lead above the action level. Translated, we came out pretty well. For copper, there was one hit above the action level. This was in Mayport at the school. It's a known problem from 2020 when they replumbed with copper piping, so that makes sense. They put in copper pipe, there was more copper in their water. The school is handling that on their own to reduce the copper. In 2020, we had 2 detects above that action level, but on resampling, we had 0 detects. So there's not a great prevalence of lead and copper in our system. It's inside people's homes and businesses where fixtures contribute some molecules. I hope that helps.
So lead and copper is the only, I think this is true, Ray, the only sample that we actually take inside behind the meter. And so we're going to have to continue to pay attention to it and understand how many lead service lines that we have. We're in compliance with the rules now. What David's talking about is future, more complicated rules. And so that's one of those external items that we'll have to pay attention to on the regulation side that might change the way we're approaching things. But right now we're in relatively good shape.
Yeah, I might just add for your board, there's a common misperception that the lead is actually in the source water, right? The rivers, aquifers, et cetera, and that's not true. The lead is in something called the service line or in plumbing inside of a house. And the EPA is saying that the service line, which is the pipe from the middle of the street into the house, that's the responsibility under the lead and copper rule. It's not the plumbing inside the house. That's the requirement.
So are we just lucky that we don't have lead pipes, or we got that staring us in the face with capital expenditures like he described?
I won't say that we're lucky. I will say that in past years, past decades, we did not put lead out in our grid. We help people determine through our sampling program whether lead in their homes and businesses is causing a problem for them, just like the example at the school.
Rick?
I don't know for sure, but I'm going to make an educated guess that it is randomized in order to get a better sample set over time.
Ray, did you have something to add?
Everything that's being said is correct. Anytime, so we have an active R&R rehab and replacement program. We have undersized water lines, and when we replace those water lines, if there are lead or copper services going up to the meter, we also take the opportunity to replace those as well. And there was a time period, David probably knows this better than I do, when you no longer could put in lead and copper lines. And so we've done a desktop analysis using our GIS, using that time as a surrogate to assess how many that there may be out there, but we're also going to do further assessment. But we don't believe on the JEA system from the meter to within the right-of-way that we have a large issue. But as the lead and copper rule talks about, it's really that entire service line all the way to the structure. And I know if I'm saying anything correctly, Haifu will correct that.
Yeah, those are referred to as sort of the public side, which is the part usually from the meter to the middle of the street, and the private side, which is from the meter into the house. That's how it's oftentimes referred to.
So I don't know if I feel good that the entire industry is going to go through what we're going through with replacement and expense attached to that. It's your number one challenge as an industry, and it's most of our capital that's going to be expenses that are coming up. Is there a bright spot in somebody trying to figure out how to do that more efficiently, more effectively, more cost? I don't know how technology can help, but if that's your number one issue, what are you doing around that issue?
So I'd maybe just offer two thoughts, right? So a lot of the infrastructure, I'll move away from the service line that's bringing the water into the house or into the business and go into the main infrastructure, which is that $1 trillion problem I talked about that our reports did. I think it's hard for us to remember, this generation, to remember that most of that was put in after World War II. And so it is long living infrastructure, and it has served us well for a long, long time. And amazingly, 80 years later, 100 years later, things are failing and now need to be replaced. And there is miles and miles of it that need to be replaced. So it's hard to think about it as the value over the lifetime, because we have to pay for it immediately. And so that's one way to think about it. Now, in terms of the future, asset management programs are so much better than they were when those pipes were put into place. And our ability to have a program to systematically evaluate and replace ongoing is much better. And in terms of technology, there are sensors on pipes now that tell us whether they're leaking and whether they can tell us what the water quality is, et cetera. And again, in that technology think tank, we actually had one person who was able to think of the impossible and talked about self-healing pipe, and that he envisioned that technology in the future would be able to have pipe fix itself as it went. And I would tell you that I had difficulty understanding that. The closest I could get to it was I used to be a competitive bicyclist, and when they created inner tubes for bicycles that could heal themselves if you popped them as you were riding, that was like a miracle. So I think maybe somebody could figure out how to get that done too for a water pipe.
I think how that relates to us is the things we were talking about on grid modernization on the water side of the business. This is one of the first times that I've heard the discussion around the water side of the world that looks like distributed energy resources on the electric side. So the world is changing quickly, and so we have relationships with groups like AWWA and that team to help us to be prepared. But it's a huge undertaking because we talk about the surface water discharge by itself is $2 billion, significant upgrades to our water system, and continuing to keep up with growth. We've got to be able to stay on top of it and be aware of it. And it's part of the reason the whole enterprise planning concept has to come in. So we're part of the way there on the one water. We're working to get one utility. So I think we're working in the same direction that you're.
Yeah, I think you're very much a model that way relative to other. Denver Water, for example, is a one service utility. It's just drinking water. That's all. There's some reuse water, but stormwater is handled by another Department of Denver. Wastewater is done by collected by the city of Denver, and there's a regional treatment plant. But so JEA is one of the few that is closest to a one utility approach of at least having all of them under the same rooftop.
Could you repeat that, David?
JEA is the best. How's that?
David, thank you for your presentation and your time and coming from Denver. We really appreciate your insights. Laura, appreciate you helping us think through some of these issues and staying on top of these issues. Jay, is there anything else?
No, just reiterate, thank you. And all of the things that are on his list of issues, you'll hear more about as we continue to work through those issues.
Yeah, I just want to thank all of you for letting me come back to a utility. It's always fun to be in a utility. And I appreciate the time, and your staff has been excellent in helping me get here and be prepared. And if there's anything AWWA can do for you, please let me know. And if you see me walking out, it's because I have a plane to catch and I have to leave in about 15 to 20 minutes from now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Stephanie, on the fiscal year 2023 scorecard results.
Stephanie, are you online?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I was on mute. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Stephanie Monroe. I'm the Director of Enterprise Analytics at JEA. And today I'll be sharing our year-end results of corporate performance with you all via our corporate scorecard. Since this completes the fiscal year of 2023, I will briefly touch on each of our scorecard metrics today. So starting at the top, for safety, we ended the year with a lost time incident rate of 0.27, which, while above our ultimate goal of 0, was well below our threshold goal of 0.34. Additionally, for sanitary sewer overflows, we also came in under our threshold goal at 0.52. On employee engagement, we conducted 2 employee engagement surveys through Glint in fiscal year 2023, both achieving higher results than the first survey conducted in FY 2022. We ended the year with an employee engagement score of 80, which lands us well within the first quartile nationally on this measure. Our DEI metrics tracking female and people of color representation among JEA's workforce have seen slow but steady upward trending. We are ending the fiscal year almost a full percentage point higher for both areas of representation. Moving to customer satisfaction, throughout the year, we've reported the results of the J.D. Power Customer Satisfaction Survey. On the commercial side, it's been steady with a second quartile result. We've seen more fluctuation on the residential side, with results being more heavily influenced by weather, storms, and fuel rates. For the fiscal year overall, we achieved a third quartile result for residential customer satisfaction, which was below our desired goal of second quartile. For our financial metrics, both O&M and capital spend exceeded the planned budget. O&M spending was 1.5% higher than budgeted, and capital spend was higher by 10.7%. The primary drivers of increased O&M were increases in salaries, supplies and materials, interest on customer deposits, and inventory carrying costs. Fluctuating fuel and purchase power expense has also been a challenge this year, but increased electric sales have resulted in this being relatively revenue neutral. Moving to reliability. On electric reliability, we performed well with our SAIDI measure, which measures how long, on average, each customer was without power in the last year, being 61.4 minutes, coming in under our threshold goal of 65 minutes. As an addition, in FY23, we tracked the accuracy of our outage communications and saw upward trending in our accuracy on estimated time to restoration, outperforming the goal of 86% by 3 percentage points. On water reliability, we also performed well on unplanned outages for customers, achieving a result far below our goal threshold for the year. However, we did have several factors which contributed to our grid water pressure metric being higher than expected and exceeding the target threshold goal for the year. Based on the board-approved pay-for-performance plan and the performance of our selected metrics for pay-for-performance, eligible employees will receive a payout of 2.25% of base salary. As usual, you see here, we've also included the scorecard metric trend data for the past 12 months, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Dr. Payson? General? Anybody?
No questions. Thank you.
$3.5. We all very confidently answered that, didn't we? Yeah, it was 3. I think it was 3.5, and this year, yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Joe?
Good morning, Chair Stein and board members. I'm Joe Orfano, VP Financial Services, and delighted to present our financial recap for fiscal year 2023. For the year, electric megawatt hour sales were down 1.3%. That's about 157,000 megawatt hours from last year, but we're in line with budget, actually about 1% higher than our budget of 12.2 million megawatt hours. Bottom left, O&M. Electric O&M spend was 22% higher than fiscal year 2022, but was 95% of the council approved budget. Stephanie touched on the O&M drivers in her scorecard remarks earlier. The principal driver for the O&M underspend for fiscal year 2023 was a delay in the Kennedy Generating Station environmental remediation project of approximately $14 million. The chart on the bottom right is electric capital spend. fiscal year 2023 capital spend was 28% higher than fiscal year 2022. Capital spend was also in line with budget, coming in $2 million above the council approved budget of $240 million. Another point of reference on the capital spend, our credit rating agencies like to see annual capital outlays at least equal to depreciation, which for fiscal year 2023 was approximately $226 million. In several prior years, capital spend for electric has been below depreciation, which creates a concern for the rating agency. So this is great to see. On electric revenue, fiscal year 2023, gross revenues were down 2%, about $30 million for the year compared to fiscal year 2022, largely driven by the decrease in megawatt hour sales referred to previously. This slide demonstrates the movement in fuel rate projections. Dark blue is current month projections, while the lighter blue is the prior month projection. The deviation in both August and September is not significant, and these small deviations are to be expected when looking at short-term differences. I'm happy to point out the moderation in our fuel rate beginning in April 2023. We're anticipating for fiscal year 2024 fuel rates in the high $30 to low $40 per megawatt hour range. Moving on to water, sales were up slightly over prior year, about 1% increase, and they were spot on with the budget. O&M spend, again, bottom left, was $227 million in fiscal year 2023, which is $22 million more than the annual budget of $205 million. The year-to-date O&M spend was 23% higher than the prior year, with the principal driver intercompany charges coming in about $16 million higher than budget. We've taken a look at this and adjusted our fiscal year 2024 budget. Ted Phillips is also leading a project here in the next few months on our allocation process to make sure that we're budgeting the proper allocation between electric and water systems. On capital, the chart bottom right, capital spend was 64% higher than fiscal year 2022. Capital spend was $94 million above our council approved budget of $400 million. That'll require us to go back to council for budget increases for fiscal year 2022. It's also that spend is significantly above annual depreciation expense of $204 million as it continues to add new capital to fund system growth. Water revenue was up 2% over prior year and in line with budget. I'd like to point out reclaim revenue was higher as a result of more new neighborhoods coming online with reclaimed water as unit sales were up 45%. Now that's starting at a relatively low base. It's a significant number, but we are seeing a significant growth in reclaim. And the final slide, our financial metrics remain strong. I'd particularly like to point out the debt to asset ratio, which for each system is at a generational low and provides the capability of layering on new debt to fund future system growth. Further, the non-fuel purchase power rate stabilization fund for the electric system was funded to a total of $246 million at fiscal year end 2023, in line with our forecast. It's also in line with a target that we had set about 18 months ago in our financial forecast. We had forecasted approximately $240 million. Our weighted average yield for our investment portfolio remains short of our target. However, I would like to point out the last 3 months yield averaged 4.25% on our approximate $780 million investment portfolio. So with that, I'll entertain any questions you may have. Agreed, but this is a long view. We are investing debt service funds, some of which go out until 2040 and beyond. So we have taken a longer view. The metric is a 2-year treasury that we measure against.
Joe, how does CIAC get factored in here?
Interesting question. We're continuing to look at that because in my prior life, it was actually booked and depreciated. It's a much more significant number on the water side than the electric. Water, I believe last year was close to $60 million. It's not booked, it's not depreciated at JEA. And I think that's a GASB requirement, but it is tracked. And in our interlocal agreements, the Nassau and St. John's are very interested in what that amount is and how it's being treated as well. We can follow up in greater detail if you'd like, Chair Stein.
Any other questions?
You used an acronym I'm not familiar with. Is that capitalized interest?
Contribution in aid of construction.
Okay.
That's developer money that's contributed toward a capital project. It's much more common on the water side.
I mean, as you develop, the developer contributes that asset once it's built. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Any other?
And we will be presenting the rating agency tentatively scheduled for February to this board and in March with the rating agencies. And we're excited about that. We're already planning.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, sir.
Consent agenda.
Don't think that we're just representing something that has all been reviewed and did not
Is there discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Motion passes. Deepen customer and community engagement. Victor?
Good morning, Chair and fellow board members. Pleased to be here again. My name is Victor Blackshear, Director of Financial Planning and Rates, and I'm here to continue our conversation concerning our electric rate recommendations. Our overall strategy, outside of these methodical steps you see here, our overall strategy is to come away with fair and competitive rates, to put us in a position where our system can be supported, to be reliable, resilient, and environmentally sustainable. And that's a challenging balance, but we're up for the challenge, and we take all of those things into consideration as we look at our strategic objectives with our rates. So we heard the feedback from the board as well as our community stakeholders, and we took a reassessment of our targeted revenues and also took into consideration the customers that can least afford it. And so we went back, sharpened our pencils, and we looked to see how we can make some adjustments. So what you see before you now is some adjustments from our prior conversations in September with the revenue requirements that we're looking to achieve, or the revenues we're looking to achieve this time around. So instead, on the residential customers, instead of us looking for 13 million, we've lowered that to 10 million or 11 million, dollars, which will take the under recovery for that rate class from 87% to 89%. We also lowered the IXXLD class from 700,000 down to 300,000, which will take their under recovery up from 86% to 89%. The remaining $3 million that we will need, we're now looking towards our small commercial customers as well as our large industrial customers to achieve that $3 million gap. So those are the adjustments that we're now proposing, and we now can get into how that impacts the customers at a bill level, starting with residential customers. So for our residential rates, you can see here what we're proposing is adding 75 cents to the basic monthly charge and just under a penny or less than a penny, to the energy charge. And what that equates to for your customer that uses 1,000 kilowatt hours is $3.50 on their monthly bill. By making these incremental adjustments, we believe we can achieve the $11 million that I spoke of prior. And yes, sir.
I was looking at those numbers and I just went back and looked at my bill, just trying to,
yes, sir,
to understand them and so forth. And when you really look at the energy cost or the, it's about half the bill on mine, and but we seem to we're raising our rate 4.5%, but then there's a bunch of other items below there. That do those all go up by that percentage also? Are they all based on percentage, or are those fixed costs?
So on the residential bill, there's your basic monthly charge, which you see, and your environmental charge. But in addition to that, there's taxes and fees. Those are percentages based off of the amount of the bill that's being charged.
Calculated in this?
No, sir. These exclude the taxes and fees.
Okay. So it'd be slightly more then. Okay.
Yes.
But also the fuel portion of your bill makes up, depending on which month, 30 to 40% of that cost as well. And those ride with the cost of the fuel, right? So we pass those along. Okay.
I understand that. I just wanted to know if those other ones were fixed or percentages. So the increases would be slightly more than the 625 or 485, 488 and 18. It might be another $1 or something, or 50 cents or something.
Yes, sir.
Jay, do you have okay.
But just one other point on that. That doesn't count towards the $11 million that we'll need for JEA, because those taxes and things go to a third party.
But they're still what our customers pay.
Right. Understand.
Yeah, that's what.
The next slide. Yeah.
Thank you. So with those additional adjustments to the residential rates, we still foresee our total utility cost for our customers will still be amongst the lowest in the major cities of Florida. So we see this as a positive, even though we know that we're very sensitive to the impacts that it has to our residential customers. In addition to that, I also just want to call to attention that our customer relationship team does a really good job of being in tune with those customers that can least afford it, and they have opportunities, they provide opportunities for those customers to get services or assistance, with local communities, charities that's within our community, as well as they offer free energy audits, and then they also work with them to have pay arrangements that works within their finances.
And Sheila, have we seen phone calls into the service center regarding issues with bills, affordability of bills go down over the past 3 months as fuel costs have gone down? I'm just curious what our inflow of phone calls have been.
The inflow of calls has remained steady. The customers, although the bills have reduced slightly, still have concerns about being able to manage the cost of the service.
On this chart, the $209.24, that's a total bill charge?
That is the total bill for customers that have electric, water, and sewer.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Nice to see. Good work.
How if this were percentages compared to income levels in these cities, would we still be at the lowest rate?
I have not taken a look at it.
We don't know, but we can find that out for you. So we can pull the data on the median income in these metro areas and have that, and we can show you that data going forward.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Ted, if you looked at this instead of total bill, but cost per kilowatt hour, would it be the same or different? Is it different?
So there would be some fluctuation because, just like Victor said, so really there's several components to the bill. So there's the usage charge or the kilowatt hour charge. There's the basic monthly, the flat charge. So some of these communities charge more than we do, and some of them charge less than we do. So that would put us in a different place, but they're having to recapture those. They're recapturing those costs different ways than we are, right? A different philosophy. And then there is the component of the taxes that we pay. Every area has a different wrinkle on what kind of taxes that they're paying. But we have all that data. We can pull more layers of the onion back for you if you're want to know that. Be happy to do that.
It would be interesting as a way of measuring our efficiency if we could just look at the actual costs per unit instead of the bills to get those things out of it.
I mean, I think that the idea was, at the end of the day, this is what the consumer has to bear, right? And so, but to understand what those numbers mean, there's things behind it, and we have, like I said, we have that data, and we'd be happy to share that with you. And like this says, this is not only the electric bill comparison, but this is also the water and sewer bill. We're combining all three because most of our customers are paying all three, right? And so we like, in Jacksonville versus St. Pete or, any of the other metro areas.
I think we're always looking at best practices and finding deficiencies in the system, but I like looking at total bill because it's the only thing that really normalizes it in the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's nice to see we're down at the bottom and not at the top.
And in the spirit of best practices, the only line that's gone down since October of 22, other than ours, yay us, is Gainesville. So I'm just kind of curious, not now, but let's find out what they've been able to do.
Great point, Marty. Any other questions of Victor or Ted? Next, Paul Mitchell. Oh, you got a couple more?
Yeah. Chair Stein, yes. There's a few more slides. But I appreciate it. So that was residential, but as we stated also earlier, to get the remaining revenues that we're looking at there's also commercial and industrial customers as well. So for our small commercial and industrial customers, the only thing we're adjusting is their energy charges, and by making those adjustments to achieve the additional $1.3 million, that impact to the customers is probably around 3%. Approximately 3% will be added to their monthly bills. And as we discussed in our previous meetings, we also recommended redesigning a long overdue interruptible service rider, and now we can also look at the impacts to those customers and their bills as well. So you can see here, one of the things that we recommended in the rate redesign is pulling apart our demand charge credit for greater transparency and working with our rate consultants. Best practices was to equate that value of interruption to the cost of a combined turbine unit. When we looked at our IRP in 2022, that pretty much equated to a $5.14 credit for those particular customers. So you couple that with the energy adjustment charges that we were recommending and phasing out the contract discounts. What we foresee happening is for these customers, it will have a 4 to 5% increase to their monthly bills. And then the other design that we discussed previously was replacing this extra large demand rate with a new time of use extra large demand rate, and I'll give you a glance at what that structure looked like as well. So there's a lot of numbers here, and I'm not going to go line by line, but I will kind of give you an overview of the changes in those rate structures. So From the current to the proposed GSXLD, we're not really changing the fixed components, the basic monthly charges and that fee. But the energy, we are making some adjustments there, where we're going from a tiered energy charge to an on and off peak energy charge. Same for the demand, and we're going from a coincident peak demand charge to a on and off peak demand charge structure. But the KVAR structure will remain the same. And the last piece is what we've been teeing up for a while is we're also exploring replacing the fixed monthly fuel rate for this rate class with a day-ahead real-time fuel pricing rate, which I'll go into further on the next slide. So overall, this is a very intricate pricing process that we're still evaluating, and it goes between our energy operations folks, our customer, as well as our billing folks. In a nutshell, what it just entails is our energy operations folks will see what it will cost incrementally to serve these customers in this class, and then provide those hourly prices to the customer a day ahead. And then the customer will make a decision when to run their productions based off of those estimates. And then at the end of the month, our billing support group will take those calculations and then bill the customer accordingly. Now, Chair Stein, this is my last slide, so if there's any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Just a thank you for listening to us, and we pushed back a little bit on the residential side, so I appreciate you paying attention.
And Ted and Victor and your teams, thank you for working towards getting the information we need to fully understand this.
I appreciate that, Chair.
So Victor, thank you. Next, Paul Mitchell, but before Paul gets started on his presentation, I wanted to thank a lot of people that worked hard on this. Jason Gabriel, England Timpson Miller, Tripp Gulliford, and CBRE for all their efforts, and specifically John Baker for taking the lead here and working towards moving this project forward, which I think has the capability of being one of the best sites on the Eastern Seaboard. So with that, Paul, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Chair Stein, and I would agree with you. Good morning, everyone. Paul Mitchell with Economic Development and Real Estate. In 2018, JEA decommissioned the St. Johns River Power Plant, or SJRPP, located off of New Berlin Road and immediately adjacent to the North Side Generation Site. Over the past few years, JEA has completed demolition, site clearing, environmental remediation in anticipation of future development of the site that will provide the highest and best public use. During this process, we have been working with engineering firm England Timpson Miller and international real estate consulting and brokerage firm CBRE to attain site certainty and to formulate a strong disposition strategy. It is clear in working with these teams, based on the location, size, and proximity to highways, rail, and the port, that SJRPP is a strategic asset for JEA that, when developed, will have a significant impact and public benefit to our community and state as well. Our charter authorizes JEA to dispose of real property if it determines it is in the best interest of JEA, also allowing the board to delegate the authority to an officer to execute instruments and agreements. On August 29, 2023, this board approved the updated Real Estate Services Procurement Directive, which defines our real estate rules and procedures. Articles 4 and 6 of the directive allow the board to authorize the CEO or designee to enter into agreements for the disposition of long-term strategic sites. At this time, staff is requesting the board to declare the former SJRPP property surplus, designate the property as a long-term strategic site, and to authorize JEA's managing director, CEO, or designee to execute agreements to go to market. Should this request be approved, the CEO and staff shall provide semi-annual updates to the board on our progress. It is also important to note that per the resolution of this action, board approval is required prior to JEA executing or entering into a master development agreement. And with that, I'll take any questions.
This is exciting, and having been part of the Southside Generating Station property, whenever that was, years and years and years ago, and that process, I can see the importance of this property, and I think it's an incredible opportunity. My questions are around the resolution, and just Regina, I told Jay I was going to check in with you. I apologize I didn't get to before the meeting, but on page 116, we do take, we recognize that this is outside of the real estate directive, and you mentioned that. And it also mentions that a master development agreement would come to the board, but there's a lot of moving parts in the middle of that. And I guess, Regina, I'm going to ask you, put you on the spot, given all the conversation we had with what we were trying to accomplish with the real estate directive, are you comfortable with the way this resolution reads?
So through the chair, if I may. The way the resolution is drafted, or as drafted, the real estate directive allows you to designate the
Regina,
strategic
can you
sites.
speak up? Yeah. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
The way the resolution is drafted, in compliance with the real estate directive, you are allowed to make the findings, which you'll find in paragraph 3 of the resolution, to support creating or making the designation of a strategic site. What's also, what differs a little from the policy, there are transactional limits in the policy. If you approve the resolution as drafted, you'll waive the transactional limitations in the real estate directive, as well as the delegation of authority, which affects Jay's signature authority. So those are the waivers which you're allowed to make those concessions to deviate from your policies in order to effectuate the transactions related to the property. The only other deviation is, which I think may be captured in the real estate directive, you get a quarterly update on transactions, and here you'll get a biannual update on the transactions related to the property.
And one of the issues, as I recall, and again, we went back and forth on this directive a lot, was the original one gave the CEO unlimited authority. Can you remind me where we landed on the CEO's authority?
So in the real estate directive, the transactional authority for real estate transactions is $2 million. The CEO is authorized to do those without board approval. And in the 2021 delegation of authority, the CEO is authorized to execute agreements up to $50 million.
And do we envision, Paul, that the approval process through this strategic will fall within those guidelines? Or, I mean, I know John's going to be overseeing the whole thing, so I'm feeling good about that, but.
I do. I think if it falls outside of that, we are going to come to the board.
Okay.
Can I ask a dumb question? How do we?
So I'll take a stab at that, because I think that in order to provide the flexibility that we need to be able to enter into a master development agreement requires us to be able to work outside of what the directive itself had put in place. Because if we don't allow for that flexibility, then it becomes very difficult for a master developer to come in and to allow them to make the most out of that asset.
Because of the sunshine? I mean, I don't know why.
Because of the dollars, the way the structure would work, the method that we haven't gone through the ITN, so don't know exactly what it would look like. But in order to allow us to do long-term leases if that's the solution, if we go down that path, for the developer to spend the money to develop all of the property that is not ours, it just allows a lot more flexibility to allow that. And there may be other folks that can expand on that from CBRE or
Jason. Again, Mr. Chair, what's contemplated with disposition of the property with the timing over multiple years, because what I suspect is there are going to be multiple transactions for disposing of the property, whereas a portion of the property may be used for, say, facilitating port activities. A portion of the property may be used for long-term or short-term leasing. The portions may be used for expansion of the utility. So there'll be multiple transactions to dispose of the property over multiple years.
Rick, do you have a?
Just trying to understand. So, but the master developer, I mean, we're talking about engaging a master developer, but before any of that happens, we have to approve the master developer still within this agreement.
Yes, sir. What?
And the guy and the package that is put forward.
Two pieces here that gives us clarity to the master developers that would respond to the ITN RFP to let them know that this is something that gives them that flexibility that they need as well. So yes, but the ITN will come back and need your approval
before any piece of property is sold.
Before we enter into the ITN itself.
Gotcha.
But aren't you separating one piece?
There's a second piece of this. We're separate. The main portion of FJRPP is will all be presumably under some sort of a master development. There is one section that is outside of that main piece of SJRPP that we would go ahead and sell outright. And we could do that now once we have this approval.
Okay, so that would trigger that part. Okay.
Triggers both of those.
That's what I was curious about. Okay.
Triggers both.
What, Paul, do you have anything to add?
I think it's been actually covered, Chair Stein.
Okay. All right, so let me see if I understand it. At first I thought we were giving you the right to sell these properties for whatever you wanted to, without bringing it back to us. And I can understand, if we met every 6 months, why that would be obviously important. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're really talking about is that one piece of property, and then also having you to be able to negotiate with a master developer.
It's the two things. It does allow us to sell that one piece of property, but it ultimately allows the master developer to come in and develop the property without every time they're having to do some kind of transaction to come back to work with us. And maybe, I'm not sure I'm simplifying that enough, but it gives them the flexibility to be able to sell the property, to build roads on the property, to spend the money that needs to be spent to be able to develop that property without having to come back each time they're trying to do that.
Are they spending our money or their money?
Their money. I mean, again, we have to go through an ITN process and see what it is.
We would have a pre-negotiated price, typically in a master development agreement or some groundwork on what they would purchase the price for in the future.
I think there'd be a framework for what that might look like. And if it's a ground lease or an outright sale, then that would come up. But this allows them to be able to build infrastructure that we would not have to spend money on if we could go through this process.
So I'm involved in a 1,000-acre life science campus project north of Tampa for Moffitt Cancer Center. Similar thing, very similar thing. We're working with a master developer. What we have not given is any one person so much authority. And I'm not saying, it just typically, and again, if John is going to be the person, then I'm comfortable with John being the person that represents us. But Bobby's assigned it to you. The challenge I think we have is, do we create a separate committee to help direct that effort? But as written, it just.
Yeah, but let me just make sure, if it's more than one person, you got sunshine issues that you got to deal with. So that was my thought there. I'm open to anything that makes sense. And number one, we have one thing we should do, I think, today is separate that property so we can sell it. We sell that property, helps with infrastructure. That's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, I'm just trying to think through, once we find a master developer, which has got to come back to us, because we will have say-so on how that looks. Mm-hmm. And once that is developed, we can put some more borders around. I mean, Barty, John, y'all bring up some good points, but let's focus on what we want to do right now, which is to separate that property and sell that property. The second piece is, through hopefully next year, we'll find a master developer, which has to come back to us, which I think what Paul wants is flexibility to get the type of master developer who is not going to get concerned about the bureaucracy of, how we come back. So I think we're open. I think it's worth a discussion. But if the only thing we do today is to try to get this property separated, I think that's important. The next step, I think, is important, is figuring out which gives Paul and Jay the flexibility to get the best, master developer as possible, working with CBRE and ETM and Jason. So I'll hand it back to you, Jay, and get your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. There's some, this gets out of my area, but there's some complexities with the different than what you may see at the one that you're talking about, because of the some state rules that put in place what and when we can spend money once we have adopted a master development agreement. And I think this provides the flexibility and the certainty for people that will be bidding on this, to give them that. But ultimately, the first thing we need to be able to do is to sell that piece of property that's not part of the larger piece, and start marketing that. And we need to be able to be sure that we get enough room for the master developer to navigate so they can get the job done.
If it's possible for us to do step one today and come back and do step two with a more thorough legal explanation of why it's necessary, both legally and practically, I would feel a lot more comfortable. But I don't want to slow this project down either. So you got to tell us if we're really making a bad boo-boo because we don't completely understand something.
I've got to look to the experts that are here. And I don't know if Jason, Tripp, Tyler, if one of you is able to answer this.
Well, and to be clear, my problem is not declaring surplus and allowing us to move forward. I don't know that the resolution gets where I want it to go, which is why I addressed it to Regina, because again, we spent 8 months negotiating with Regina and myself and staff, the real estate directive. So I don't have a problem philosophically with where we're going. I just don't know that this resolution reflects controls that we have asked to be put in place. And the Southside Generating Station that issue was addressed in the sunshine. That was out there in the open in the sunshine.
Yeah. And I don't know the details of the south side generating, but I think it was a single site transaction. And versus this one, maybe, as Regina said, multiple years.
It's a
over
parcel, it's a
transaction.
parcel, it's a parcel.
I mean, somebody's going to be negotiating. You make a good point, Mark, but somebody's going to be negotiating with Jay, a complicated agreement. And to me, if we don't do it right, we can find ourselves losing some opportunities. But Tripp, you got some thoughts. You might address any thoughts you might. And Tripp represents CBRE.
Yeah. Thank you, Bobby. No, I mean, my thoughts are all just about marketability. I think we're having a discussion here about what the process is and the steps in terms of declaring it surplus to be able to move to the next step. And I think that's probably outside my bailiwick. I don't know if you want to address that, Paul, but I think, the key to all of this is when we go out to market for you all, that we remove as much uncertainty around the offering as we possibly can to simplify this just for the development community. So that would be my ask.
Yeah, it's Tripp. Would it be worth mentioning very briefly that?
Wait.
I can't hear you.
We can't hear.
Tyler.
Hey, why don't y'all come up here so we can hear it?
You sit there.
There we go. Good morning. I'm Tyler Matthews with ETM. Tripp, as you all go to market, so Tripp's with CBRE, I'm with ETM. We're providing certainty. Tripp's taking it to market. I think, Tripp, it would be interesting to very, very briefly explain the difference between pods 16 through 19 and then the circle or the whole thing, right? Because we need it to be strategic, and then we intend to proceed forward.
And I don't know that we have a map to show 16, 17, and 18, but it's property that's separate apart from the main portion of SJRPP. It's down on New Berlin and Heckscher. It's a part that we think that it's worth going out to market immediately, separate apart from the larger property. We think that can go to market quickly. It's a standalone parcel. We think we can get that into the market next year. That can drive significant revenue for JEA that they can then redeploy into the planning and some of the infrastructure work that has to be done for the main parcel. So to me, that's the most immediate ask is that.
Why don't we do this? I mean, the other thing I'd add on this parcel, I know it's not next door, but having architectural control, making sure this thing looks good is, something I think is important.
Never do.
And that I have total comfort with Paul, Laura, Jay, and CBRE. That's just my opinion. But let's separate this out. Make sure whoever we, pick to buy this site, make sure this thing looks good. So I think let's focus on a motion there. Let's come back with a more, thoughtful of what the timing is, define a master developer. And if we need to have a board meeting sooner than later, we can do that, Jay. I think the more important thing is separating this thing out and get going, today on selling that property.
So again, I'm going to say my issue is the way the resolution is written, because it addresses 1,200 acres. Is that the entire property? That's all of the properties? So we're addressing
1,200 is all of the property.
So 1,200, the resolution is 1,200 acres. The resolution allows for our real estate directive guidelines on approvals and delegation of authorities is waived on 1,200 acres, technically.
Yeah, but we're going to separate. We're going to have a new.
My issue is the way the resolution is written.
So,
what we're going to do is step back and give approval to separate this piece. How many acres is that piece that we want to separate? 38?
38.
This parcel 38 acres. Let's separate the 38 acres, have a resolution to separate that out. Let's focus on that today. And then let's come back with some thoughts on the master developer, when we are going to, move to reach out to a master developer and think through what that resolution will look like. Jay, if you wouldn't mind working with John Baker on that, that would be fantastic.
Yep.
And then come back with something at our next board meeting that clarifies that. Does that make sense?
With some steps and some decision points
all that.
Do you have anything else?
So, Mr. Chair, I did have the opportunity to consult with Ms. Dutton and Mr. Gabriel.
I can't hear you. Yeah.
I did have the opportunity to consult with Mr. Gabriel and Ms. Dutton as a possible solution. Today, you could declare the property surplus, and the portions that you discussed, the 38 acres for disposal, you could go ahead and move forward with that. With the remainder, we could bring it back and you can make the designation as the strategic site, and you can talk about your options and take action on that as a step 2 process.
I am all in on that.
Why don't you make a motion?
I will make a motion that today we declare 38 acres, 38.
To make the whole parcel.
Parcel 16.
The whole parcel.
Surplus. The 38 acres.
Bobby's making my motion.
It might be more than 38, just for clarity. It's parcels 16, 17, and 18 on the.
Okay. So parcels 16,
through 19.
17,
Through 19 on
18, and now 19.
Right. Correct.
Go ahead.
Does declaring it surplus, does it still have to come back to the board for approval for sale?
You can reserve that right, or you can authorize the CEO to go ahead and dispose of those parcels.
I would, as I'm moving through my motion, and so everybody's helping me craft it, I would be fine with the CEO having the authority on those parcels to sell those parcels, because I think that's the critical path. I think anything else on the strategic site needs to come back with timelines and decision points to this body.
Second.
Now, let's make clear.
To clarify your motion.
We declaring everything surplus.
Everything is surplus. Parcels.
The whole
16.
The whole site is surplus.
I'll look to the maker of the motion.
Yes.
Is it your intent to declare the 1,200 as surplus?
And 1,200 is surplus.
And to authorize the CEO to dispose of parcels 16 through 19 through sale?
Correct.
Regina, also to come back.
And to come back with a more definitive plan on the remaining parcels.
And the remainder parcels will be brought back for board consideration as to action how to dispose of those properties.
Correct.
And the CEO work with John Baker to craft something that come back that bring to the board.
Trip, are we putting the brakes on this project by doing this, or?
No, from my standpoint, a 2-step process is perfectly fine. Okay. The immediate need was for 16 through 19 to be able to make that actionable. So we're not putting ourselves at any detriment.
My issue with the resolution as presented was that it took in 1,200 as opposed to the immediate need, which I think my well-crafted, thank you, Regina,
Jason,
motion has.
Do you want to come up and speak? Jason is the past general counsel who's been working with Regina and Jay and Paul. Yeah.
So Jason.
Gabriel with Burr Foreman. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. I just wanted to, I was conferring with Ms. Ross. I think you want to definitely surplus the whole acreage, the 1,200 acres, and at the same time, perhaps label it as a strategic site pursuant to your directive. And then what I'm hearing is, particularly from Board Member Lanahan, is to perhaps, for purposes of the waiver of the $2 million threshold, is to limit that to the 38 acres that we just described, the pods, I think 16 through 19. So I think that's what I'm hearing as the amendment. So to give the flexibility to the CEO and real estate to dispose of the 38 acres while we further refine the remainder pursuant to a program. So again, I'll just repeat real quick. Surplus the entire property, depict it and label it officially as a strategic site, but for purposes of today's action, limit the waiver of the directive of the $2 million cap to allow the flexibility to just the 38 acres.
To the 16 through 19 parcels.
Correct.
Say 38.
And then we'll come at a later date for a proper disposal of the remainder, if that makes sense. It's sort of modifying what we came here today to do to hopefully fit within the comfort of some of your board members.
And the last piece would be to come back with a definitive plan, working with John on something that makes sense, that gives Jay the flexibility and the team the flexibility, but also make sure that there's enough breaks in place that we have our responsibilities in check.
Yeah, I guess, Mr. Chair,
that was the intent of my agented motion that has, I think, been seconded by Rick.
Any discussion?
A question. Does this action in any way contradict what we approved on August 29th as responsibilities and duties of the MD CEO?
Through the chair to the board member, I do not believe so. I believe actually what you're doing is well within the realm of what you approved in that directive. Because one of the things you did in that real estate directive, you created this strategic site, sort of this, when you have a property such as this that's comprehensive, that has different parts. I think as Ms. Ross explained earlier, you could have a part of it that's conveyed to the port for port uses. You could have a part of it that's continued to be used by JEA. You could have a part of it that's actually conveyed by lease or fee simple to a private developer. Because of the large nature of both the property itself and the fact that it's going to probably traverse time in terms of how you dispose of it, this, I would submit, fits right within the idea of what your strategic site article states. And really, I don't mean to oversimplify it, but the issue of waiving the ability for the CEO or the real estate department to be able to enter into agreements and dispose of the property, depending on the developer or the interest, is really just a measure. There are controls in place. There'll be reporting and disclosures. Nothing can get done without it being subject to your ultimate review and supervision. But it's a measure to allow for some dexterity as we go day to day, as opposed to collegially meeting to make every sort of iota of the transaction approved. So, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Motion passes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yep. JEA solar site, property, real property condemnation. Yeah.
All right. As part of the large diameter pipe evaluation and replacement program, a 42-inch sewer force main leaving the McMillan master pump station was video inspected, and a portion of the pipe needs to be replaced. The repair requires a bypass system set up to reroute the flow and will require laying down two 24-inch pipes side by side along the route indicated in pink. In order to proceed with the repair, temporary construction easements indicated in aqua are required for the duration of the project. It is important to note that several routes were investigated for the bypass. After working with engineering, environmental, project outreach, and other departments, this route was selected because it will limit the impact local traffic and allows JEA to utilize the school's property when the school is out for summer. There are 4 properties along this route that require property rights: the City of Jacksonville and Duval County Public Schools, school board, will grant JEA a temporary easement on those properties. The other two parcels are privately owned and each have their own challenges and will require board approval for condemnation, but for different reasons. First property is a vacant lot along 13th Street. JEA has been negotiating with this family-owned estate and they would like JEA to purchase the property and completely. Due to titling issues, the family cannot grant JEA property rights without going through probate or condemnation. The family requested JEA pursue condemnation because probate court can take additional time and expense to the family. The second parcel has a vacant home on the property. JEA has been discussing purchasing property rights with this absentee owner for months, and approximately 3 months ago, they stopped discussions with JEA and have not returned phone calls or emails. JEA is requesting purchasing a temporary construction easement along the east side of the property that will keep the home available for use. We are requesting a 2-year temporary construction easement, but only anticipate using it for 9 months. At this time, JEA Real Estate is requesting board action for condemnation authority for 2 properties for the McMillan Bypass project. Happy to address any questions.
Any comments? Motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Pedro, talking about the Solar Sites Award, JEA.
Good morning, Chair Stein and members of the governing board. Pedro Melendez here to provide an update on this. We are pleased to bring this action item to the board today as an integral part of the electric IRP goals. The 3 main objectives we have today is share the evaluation results of the RFP process, review the economic analysis of a PPA versus a build transfer agreement of these solar sites, and provide a recommendation to award and enter into an agreement to develop these JEA solar sites. Let's begin with the summary of the solar requests for proposals and evaluations. The RFP requested the construction of large-scale solar sites at 3 JEA-owned parcels with power delivered via a power purchase agreement or a build-own transfer with operations and maintenance services. Expecting at least 4 sites with not to exceed 74.9 megawatts within the Forest Trail, Miller, and Peterson parcels, also including a battery option. The phase 1 included 15 proposals. These were shortlisted to 5 after evaluating the project economics, the experience, financial structure, credit quality, permitting experience, ability to execute the procurement and supply chain strategies, and annual expected output of these facilities, and considerations for environmental factors associated with these parcels. 5 entities moved into phase 2 evaluation, with the primary metrics being commercial terms outlined in a term sheet, the project viability, and the final pricing after conducting a site visit and also interviews. Florida Renewable Partners, an NextEra energy company, resulted as the highest qualified company to begin negotiations. Let's go over the proposed projects. JEA has substantially negotiated with Florida Renewable Partners today. The PPA proposed for 25 or 35-year terms with buyout options at fair market value at the 13th, 25th, and 35th year anniversary. 4 facilities were proposed, representing a total of 280 megawatts nameplate capacity, producing approximately 635,000 megawatts an hour of clean energy. In addition to the PPA BTA, JEA has foremost proposals for batteries to build within these 3 JEA-owned parcels as well. The commercial operation dates are September 2026 for 3 of these sites and September of 2027 for the 4th site. In summary, the negotiation for these 4 solar sites energy price for a 35-year term, JEA interconnection and renewable energy credits is anticipated to not exceed $860 million. The energy price, which is below 40.211, happens to be a very favorable pricing for JEA. As illustrated in the pie chart, this will represent up to 5% of JEA's clean energy goal. To help understand the value to our customers, the cost could be described as favorable. We have negotiated below market energy prices considering 2 main drivers. Number 1, we're directly connected to JEA's transmission system, so there's no wheeling and there's no major infrastructure cost to be able to do it. And number 2, ownership of the land. JEA owning the land represents a benefit of at least $5 per megawatt hour less, or savings of over $100 million for the life of the project. Based on recent studies, the team also negotiated options of up to 4 40 megawatts 4-hour batteries with a not to exceed $645 million. A system integration study is necessary to determine the size and the duration that will ultimately come into these sites. After evaluating the alternatives for these projects, the total cost for these facilities over 35 years is of $1.5 billion, which is in line with the recent IRP, our clean energy goals at a favorable cost. As part of these RFP, the proposals were asked to provide a bill transfer agreement model with O&M offers to JEA. Let's review the summary of these evaluation. Based on the economic analysis, which is an all-in approach to it, a PPA structure of a solar battery is approximately 25% less than a bill transfer agreement, approximately $400 million delta. In addition to that, I would like to add that there are other risks a BTA presents as we evaluate throughout this discussion. There is inflation impacts on O&M that will increase that cost. There are supply chain challenges. Owning these facilities will actually require JEA to be ready to have products that support solar sites and agreements to be able to do that. And also the provisions of the IRA that are still subject to further interpretation and refinements by the U.S. Treasury and the IRS. In conclusion, let's go over the proposed facilities and the final recommendation. In summary, to build a new proposed facilities shown in this slide, staff believe it is in the best interest of our customers to proceed with a PPA to develop the JEA solar sites. To that end, staff recommends to award, complete the negotiations, and enter into agreements with Florida Renewable Partners as the top-ranked firm under the request for proposals to develop solar and energy storage resources at a not to exceed $1.46 billion. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Energy Authority who was facilitating this effort, CDN Smith to help us with some of the environmental factors, PFM Financials, our finance team and electric operations teams. We have done this all together, but we have 2 key members of our organization who are in the audience. Melinda Fisher, who is the manager of Energy Resources, and Renee Brown, which is one of our electric system engineers as well. Thank you to both of them for all the work they actually had to carry us this far. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So these are 3 of the 4 sites that we had already previously owned?
Yes.
And
Sorry.
What about
3 parcels.
3 parcels that these were purchased part of that previous?
5.
There were 5.
Yeah. You remember that we had.
I went around.
You're always around. These were, remember we had an agreement with the European company. They never delivered. Right. These came back on the market, and this is where we are. Environmentally, are these sites safe to build this?
Yes, we did I made reference to CDS Smith. They did an analysis, the uplands and wetlands in the area. And yes, so about 65% of this are uplands. I'm sorry, 65% of the land is uplands. so we can develop on them. These are 3 parcels for which we're building 4 sites on them. One of the parcels as shown on this slide, it's a Peterson track, has enough room to build 2 facilities in that parcel.
So it's one parcel, but they're 2 completely.
That is correct.
Oh, okay. I know why it was split that way.
That's why we want to illustrate it this way, because we had that question several times, so we wanted to help the team understand.
Any other questions? Motion?
Move approval.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Ray, glad to have you back.
Thank you, Chair Stein. It's good. It's good to be here, albeit a little bit more gimpy, but that's okay. So I'm here to provide an update on supply chain. The board might recall that we did an update at the last meeting. So we're going to talk about challenges, impacts that we and our customers are experiencing, and also touch on the mitigating actions to reduce same. So just as a quick reminder, the greatest challenge that we are experiencing currently are those transformers, the larger 3-phase transformers that are utilized by the commercial and multi-family projects. So this slide depicts the current impacts. This current year, 2023, there are currently 13 projects that are currently ready for service that could experience delays up to 7 months. At the previous board meeting, there were 10 projects with delays of up to 8 months. So while the number has increased slightly, the time frame for delay has moved down. And what I want to say is that this is a dynamic number. It almost changes daily. Projects are taken off the list as they are energized, and projects are added if they become ready for service sooner than anticipated. Looking to next year in 2024, currently there are 57 projects that are projected to be delayed with a delay of up to 6 months. At the last board meeting, that number was over 100. So this has moved significantly down. And the reason that it has is that as we reviewed the projects, as we communicated with the development community, we have updated the timeframes, and we believe that this depicts a more realistic date when it comes to project readiness. So that has seen some positive movement. And finally, because we are still in hurricane season, we maintain storm stock at sufficient levels. So if we look at the next slide and talk about mitigation, I presented this at the last board meeting. I'm not going to go over each and one of these tools. Staff keeps applying these different tools, but I do want to focus on other suppliers. So staff continues to actively pursue partnerships with additional, and in this case, international suppliers that have shorter lead times. And so this will diversify our supply base, our supplier base, and continue to mitigate impacts. We are going through the vetting process right now for 3 additional suppliers, and we're seeing some positive movement in that area. And hopefully by the next board meeting in January, we can report that we've added additional suppliers. So keeping this before the board, there's no action to be taken here, but this is, again, to bring the board up to date so you are aware of what's happening out there. And we continue, I said that at the last meeting, I'll say it here, we continue to press forward on this. And if there are any questions, be glad to take them.
Any questions? Audit services, fiscal year 2023 results. Lee?
Yes, good morning, Chair, Board. Lee Montanez, Director of Audit Services. With me here today Rashid Britton. He's the manager of our internal audit. He will be presenting the internal audit plan. So first, I want to do a very brief introduction of internal audit. The team. We have 2 internal audit managers, Rashid and another manager, Julie, sitting out there today. We have a staff of 4 senior internal auditors. One of them an IT auditor. Highly experienced team. Experienced here at JEA. Certifications, audit, risk certifications. Most of them have 1. Several have more than 1. Truly experience and education, they're very good. The third element here is building relationships, and that's what audit services has done past several years, is building relationships, which increase trust and provides a little bit more value. So we follow the guidance from the Institute of Internal Auditors. That provides us with the framework and the standards, including, that also includes abiding by the Code of Ethics. We do follow the model of 3 lines of defense, which management's first line, risk and compliance is second line. Internal audit becomes that 3rd line of defense, with the board providing with direction and oversight. So fiscal year 23 results, it's a combination of audit activities and advisory services. That increase in trust has brought a lot of more approach from the business for us to do advisory work with them, and that's what we've done. We still have some audits that are in process, and more specifically, those related with IT, as our IT auditor was hired later during that fiscal year 23 year. Action plans. So year to date, management has closed 35 action plans. We still have 16 that are still open. They are on track and not past due. This slide has to do with being more formal about those communications with the board. We do this through the committee meetings throughout the year. The thing I want to bring to your attention is that we're going to go through a quality assessment review later this year, and we'll present the results to the board. Finally, related to ERM, ERM has updated 6 top enterprise risks this year. They've completed 5 business unit risk assessments, and they've implemented enterprise-wide training and a GRC application. So I'll pass it along to Rashid unless there's questions.
So I do have a question.
Sure.
Since I was the chair of the affectionately referred to GAC committee, you used to report into our body along with the external auditor. I presume with the elimination of committees that you then would reach out to the chair if there were any issues or concerns, and as would be the case with the external auditor.
Yes, that would be the process.
Just making sure that we have that open line of communication.
Fiscal year 2024 internal audit plan. Chief, thank you.
Morning, Chair. Morning, Board. Thanks for the time. This morning, my name is Rashid Britton, Manager of Internal Audit, and I just had a couple talking points I wanted to go through today. 1, obviously the audit plan and timeline, what you see here. 2, we, per JEA charter, there's a board action that requires an approval of the annual audit plan, and then a little bit about the plan and process. So we have a risk-based value-add approach where we make sure that we get the inputs from internal and external sources. So internal, we sent out 99 surveys to the directors as well as managers, and 92% response rate. So thank you to everyone that responded. And we take that information bottom up. We also talk with all the VPs and also the chiefs about their risk concerns, their goals, and anything that may prevent them from reaching goals. Thirdly, internally, we speak with our ERM department about top enterprise risk, and we factor that into our internal audit plan. Externally, we consider external audits that have been done, such as the NERC and FERC, the SIP, the E&Y, when we do our risk assurance mapping process. And through that process, we have our annual audit plan, which has 9 audits. It also has some advisory and administrative services. Just want to highlight 1 or 2 of those audits, and they're see here in Q1 and Q2, the sales tax exemption, service levels agreements, as well as management oversights and tools and processes. These audits are highly value added. We took the insight from our internal stakeholders and said, this is where we need help at. So we wanted to make sure that we put those top of our list, top priority, to add value to the business. And on the next slide, there's just the remainder of our fiscal year. And this timeline's based on our availability and resources, and would also want to note that we are open to any suggestions, inputs to make adjustments to the plan. With that, I will take any questions, and if there's no questions, ask for a board approval of the annual audit plan.
Any questions? Motion? Second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So the last item here is the evaluation and the board self-assessment. It's that time of year for the board to conduct the CEO evaluation and board of self-assessment. Following the meeting today, board services will send 2 emails. The evaluations will be conducted in diligent. However, a copy of the evaluations are located in supplemental materials. The CEO evaluation email will include the executive core competencies, fiscal year 2023 performance scorecard, and CEO self-assessment. Both assessments will be due by December 1. Prior to December 30th, I will meet with Jay to review the evaluation feedback received from the board. At the January 30th meeting, I'll provide an overview of the results of both the CEO evaluation and the board assessment. We were talking about doing the managing director CEO contract. You know, it might make sense, since we're pressing on time, is to do that on the January 30th after we've had assessments from board and a full evaluation. Any thoughts there?
You just have to work for free for a couple of months.
Not exactly.
I think Jay's doing a fantastic job. His team's doing a fantastic job. And let's make sure we have the time to fully talk through these issues. And if Jay, you're okay with that.
So we'll get it through diligence. Will you send an email to us telling us that
yep,
it's there? Thank you.
With that, any other comments, thoughts?
Happy holidays.
Yes. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, staff, executive team, and board for a great meeting.
And the January 30th meeting doesn't mess us up with Tripp and them. That's a long time.
If it does,
We're
we
fine.
can have we'll have a special board meeting if it does. But if it doesn't, Jay.
Yeah, we'll let you know if there's a problem.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Meeting's adjourned.